Hi everyone. I am Ranjit. I'm a partner with EY India, and it's great to be part of this discussion, especially on this important topic. Today, I think while we've been seeing the evolution of digital transformation over the past, I would say 4 5 years, but over the past 1 2 years, we are seeing the transformation of AI. And today, I think almost every organization is either in the process of adopting generative AI or exploring ways in which they can use this technology. So I think it's a timely topic that we are discussing with you all. So look forward to this discussion. So while I was just doing some research and statistics in terms of how big generative AI is, I think currently it's roughly about $15 billion business globally, and the projection is by the end of 2030 it will grow at least by 10 times, so roughly about $150 billion. So I think it's a unprecedented change that we're going to see in terms of the adoption of generative AI. So having said that, I think if I can come to you to Mr. Shakti, since you deal with AI almost day in and day out, so if you can help us sort of give a brief overview in terms of what are the different kinds of AI and specifically why we are seeing the evolution of generative AI for our audience, I think it'll be really helpful.
Sure, Mr. Ranjit, and hello, everyone. Uh, well, AI has always been there in existence for decades, and now it has become really prominent because of all the new technologies that have come up, and like they all look like magic, I mean, a kind of miracle. So, I mean, I have been in the data industry for a long time, and the very first example that comes to mind is from 1997, where there was a whole newspaper ad in Wall Street Journal which showed a young father wearing a baby diaper and holding a beer. What that showed is when they did the data analysis, they found that when young single fathers go to buy baby diaper, they buy beer also, right? So that was data intelligence, and that led the stores to keep beer and diapers together within the store. So that is, I think, one of the very early examples of AI, and that's an example actually of business intelligence. Now moving forward, a lot of new forms of AI have come up, a lot of machine learning models have come up. There are neural network based. The computers have become really fast. You can have transistors with more than you can have chips with more than 100, I think, or 100 million, or like close to a billion transistors in a chip. So the performance actually has improved a lot. So what has happened now is that this concept of generative AI has come up, and generative AI is nothing else but it's a neural network based language prediction model which is based on the transformer architecture. Now what that means is you take like infinite amount of textual data or a lot of data, and then you train the model. And so for example, for a chat GPT, it took like nearly 8 to 9 months and almost 2000 gigawatts of energy and almost like more than 100 million of water to cool down the data center. So that is one form of gen AI, and it looks like magic. You ask any question to it, and it now starts understanding you. Earlier what happened in AI is you had to explain your intent. Here you don't have to explain the intent because it understands you as if this gen AI itself is a human brain. So now you have gen AI which can generate content for you, like textual data or like movies and images and music and all that. The other thing that is out there is super AI. This AI was existed earlier, prior to Gen AI, in the sense that Alexa skills were there, right? You could talk to Alexa and like it will do the work for you. So it is as if there is a human being or a person who is doing the work for you. Or you look at Apple Siri, right? Or like you look at the driverless cars. So super AI would be something that would do a very specific task, right? And while doing that task, it will go over and above the human intelligence. When we are driving a car, we could be distracted, but a driverless car will never be distracted. That is where it has gone over and above us. Our human brain has around 10 billion neurons, right? But if you look at new computers, technology on that, they all, like Gen AI models, they all have like more than 100 billion neurons. Chat GPT-4 has 100 trillion parameters. So behind that, they must have multi-layer neural networks, and they would have gone beyond billions and billions of neurons. So that's where I think they like general AI, business intelligence, that has, now we have super AI and we have got generative AI. So I think that's where we are at this stage.
Thank you. Thank you. I think great insights again, and very good example that you shared, that AI has always existed. You gave some good examples starting from 1997. Again, interesting fact. So, coming to you, Miss Gyanvi, I think we are seeing the adoption of generative AI in almost all spheres, especially by organizations in different sectors, right? So, if you could possibly give some real, examples of where all we are seeing the adoption of Gen AI, I think it'll be really helpful.
I think thanks for that, Ranjit. I think that's a very relevant question because here at Freshworks, day in and day out, I speak to customers and I try to understand, their change in trends and, what is their adoption, etc. Right? And recently, I was going through one of the Forrester's article which said that last year there's been a 41% increase in the number of companies that are looking to adopt to Gen AI capabilities compared to conversational AI, right? And this has been a major trend. And let me take a step back here, right? The reason why they're looking to actually adopt to a Gen AI sort of a capability is because in a conversational AI capability, the system is built in such a way where it can absorb the data set, but it would need a human intervention to make a change in the process, or it would not take that timely decision. It would basically need that human intervention. But with the generative AI capability, it has the capacity to not just absorb the data set, but also generate its own content or generate its own process, right? So, and also there has been a huge revolution in the way the customers are, the businesses are trying to achieve their customer satisfaction, right? They want to ensure that they have platforms which will enable their employees to reach out to their customers in a much efficient manner. So most of the companies, come up with this ask stating that, hey, when our customer reaches out to our agent, we do not want the agent to go through and go through the previous issues, or we do not want the customer, the agent to actually spend time on that. Are there capabilities which will understand these scenarios and generate responses which will basically help the customer have a better experience and increase their satisfaction? So overall, I would like to sum it up by saying that there's going to be a huge revolution in every industry, be it healthcare, be it finance or insurance, all of these sectors which is dependent heavily on customer satisfaction. These industries are primarily going to be using these features and capabilities to ensure that there is automatic creation of processes based on the data that's happening, so that the customer's experience would improve. So I think I would like to answer that in that way.
Thank you again. So moving on to some more, maybe examples related to healthcare. I know Mr. Narendra, you may be able to share certain examples, specifically where Gen AI is being used today to solve some of the problems in healthcare, because I think there's been a lot of discussion on, Gen AI could be used to predict, how it could detect, diseases like cancer, those specific areas. If you can throw some light, I think that'll be really helpful.
So yeah, definitely, as you said, there is definitely immense potential for AI capabilities, for pharmaceutical, new developments, like for example, new drug discovery, whether it's new molecule designs, or nowadays people are talking about the personalized medicines also, and the pharmaceutical industries are gearing up for developing the medicines specifically for the particular patients. We can bring down to substantially low time, because there are vast varieties of molecules, and to find out the right molecule for further testing on the humans. So those kind of things, definitely it is going to bring the revolution here in the pharmaceutical field and the healthcare field.
Interesting aspect you spoke about, generation of data, which could really help build those models, because I think the more you're able to ingest relevant data, the more I think AI will be able to learn better and then get better over a period of time. I think the important part here is how you're able to feed in the right amount of data for it to get better. Interesting thought. So maybe staying onto the thought, if I can come to you, Mr. Ram Kumar, when it comes to ingestion of data, right? We've seen that, obviously there are two different kinds of broader data. You have structured data and you have unstructured data, right? So now, from a generative AI perspective, obviously we're looking at large sets of unstructured data, which needs to be, sort of given as input. So how easy or difficult it is for maybe data scientists to build these data models, how important it is for you to clean up the data and then put the right amount of data. What do you think is the importance of building that right data set while building these generative AI models?
I'm sure all of us would agree to this: garbage in, garbage out. So if you give wrong data, it's going to give wrong output. However, the way the LLM models are being built, I think that's where we see the advantage. When we use Gen AI with large data set. Now, I come from a aviation sector where we use or generate a lot of data. Now, yes, both structured and unstructured data. And in the aviation sector, the aircraft produces a lot of data. Now, aircrafts are connected device, so it produces a lot of data. Now, we have been trying to use this data to produce, meaningful outcome, whether for maintenance or for, flight scheduling, for various use cases. Now, very specific to MRO, where I'm working, the aviation MRO, we produce a lot of data. Now, using the existing technology, whether it's analytics tools or any other way to, process such huge amount of data, it takes effort. Whereas when we use Gen AI has that capability built in to learn from those data and models. I think that's the advantage. I believe makes a difference for Gen AI, right? The intelligence that adds to learn from the data and the models and the way it produces outcome and the input and queries and prompting that we do. This is not something that is available with the existing analytics tool or something, right? I think that's the main difference I see. So having said that, if we continue to provide junk data, then the output is going to be challenging. So we need to take care of that. However, Gen AI is going to help us in big way, the way we process huge amount of data. In our case, our engineers use the aircraft maintenance manuals, which is very huge, and each aircraft has its own manual, and when engineers work on aircraft, they'll have to refer the manuals. So step by step, they'll have to follow the process, which is a tedious process, but that's a requirement. Now, currently, the existing process is either they take a printout or they access the manual in tablet, vagera. But then using Gen AI, we are trying to help engineers to get the instruction only for the task they need to perform. They don't need to take printout or they need to refer pages to carry out the work. So that's a use case. In this case, also we provide a lot of input to Gen AI to produce that output. So to answer the question, the other part of the question is, yes, we'll have to make sure that we produce correct data to Gen AI, though Gen AI has capability to learn from it and give us the right output. But I think it's a basic necessary to provide the right data. And we are exploring on this, how do we use Gen AI for aviation sector? And there are many use cases now in the aviation industry also. Currently, we are exploring for aircraft maintenance. And this has been our learning that if we provide wrong data, then it throws out, not pleasant output. So that we'll have to take care. Otherwise, the data cleansing is part of the exercise, whether you use conventional analytics tool or we move towards Gen AI, though the efforts may come down, the time we spend on data cleansing may get reduced, but then that's a prerequisite for us, is what my understanding.
Sure. No, again, I think very interesting thoughts you put around, especially garbage in, garbage out, right? And I'm sure you're probably, I mean, the industry is also looking, aviation sector is looking at ways to where they can avoid the recent mishap like the 737 issues, so that they can better train and ensure there is more meaningful data being fed. It brings an important question to my mind while you were discussing that, right? While obviously it's important to feed in the right data, right? We've also seen a lot of instances where we've seen bias and ethical considerations coming up as some of the issues. So if I can come to you, Mr. Nirupam, because again, I'm sure in your current role, you're possibly dealing with a lot of these things. How important it is, sort of to look at some of the ethical considerations and implications of using generative AI, and typically how should business leaders tackle these issues?
So again, thank you, and it's wonderful to hear all the fellow panelists here. And coming to the question, I think it's very critical both from a data collection perspective, data infrastructure perspective, the way we collect and use the data, because for example in our business we collect a lot of personal data of people, especially when we are selling products, when we are selling financial services associated with those products. So we collect and we distribute again a lot of financial information, and it's important how we make use of it, how we secure that data, how we make sure that we have appropriate consents around that data use, but also the quality of data. The problem, what again, especially with the legacy systems, has been that the data quality checks have not been really rigorous. So we have collected huge amount of data which is inaccurate, and when we build models based on such inaccurate data, they will give outcomes which which again, first they are wrong. Second is the explainability around these models. So you talked about ethics. So one of the ethics big question is explainability, and so what we try and do is when models predict something, we try and understand. Again, there are some tools of explaining how a neural network has come up with a certain outcome, which we are seeing. So, and how good or bad it is. It's saying my internet connection is unstable. So that's very, very critical for all people who are working in generative AI space, is to understand, the limitations that are brought by the data quality, as well as limitations that are there from an explainability perspective. And also, once you have built a model, how much you want to really rely upon that outcome is a method of, again, continuously testing and seeing whether the models are working as we desired, or there's a model creep, there's a scope creep, there's a data creep that's happening, and then there's a tech debt, technical debt that has been generated by further enhancing model. But some things have improved, but some other things have degraded. So all these questions are very, very critical to understand.
Again, staying on to the thought, and if we can come to you, Mr. Amit, specifically in your current role as a CIO, right? Given that again we are looking at using Gen AI to make sense of data, how do you see in your role as a CIO, right? What could be some of the challenges related to maybe cybersecurity or data privacy? Trigger, especially when you're using some of these models.
So, talking to your questions specific to the cybersecurity and also how this model, how they ensuring you see, if you look at especially the Chat GPT, the uses of the Chat GPT has increased in the organizations. Most of the people started using Chat GPT for their, the basics mandates, front office work, mail drafting, and even for some of the time we observe like summarizations of the contract, summarizations of the legal document, finding the pitfalls into that, what are the risk finding and all those things. Now, this is getting circulated, getting published onto the kind of a open AI platform, and these things, how we are ensuring like we are not sharing and not placing some kind of a sensitive data on that kind of a network and that kind of an environment, which may, exploit in any other form of the things. In organizations like us, which is where we are actually increasing our digital maturity and all, we are going into the kind of classical way of the Gen AI, the uses enhancement, and then further getting into the multiple different POCs and all. we have established for the ChatGPT perspectives, we have established a kind of a mandate, kind of a regulations, kind of a policies internally for the employee, like, what side of the data which you can, uh, you know, uh, uh, can further explore using ChatGPT kind of the platform, what kind of the data you should not. That kind of a awareness program, that kind of a policies which we have driven, which we have rolled it out recently, on a principle. This is a very basic one, although it has to be matured as and when our AI journey will increase. So that's one major steps we have taken it up. But aside to that, like recently we have get into a kind of a AI model based analytics and those kind of stuffs, where not only we are churning out our internal data, but also we are comparing with the industry standard. So for example, we are in a manufacturing industry. So in a manufacturing industries, if we so the analysis is like, what kind of a defect percentage is, and what kind of a defect percentage the global benchmark is in some particular let's say mobile manufacturing or something, what the WTO suggests, what kind of the global index is suggesting, and giving those connected insights to the respective user. So on that particular part, like, you are actually mixing your data with the available data, and then making real-time stories or some sort of these kind of things for the different set of the management people and HODs things. So yes, those things are also we are absorbing, we are taking it. So that's a few of the steps we have taken, Ranjit.
Sure. I think, again, interesting insights, right? I mean, having a policy and then probably educating, the employees within the organization is so important because, as you rightly said, I think one is obviously the external risks that come with technology. The other is internal risks of employees sharing data, especially company confidential data in some of these platforms. So having those specific policies to ensure the users are aware of in terms of what could be shared, could not be shared, I think is so important. And I'm sure a lot of organizations are looking at that, right? Now, again, coming back to you, Mr. Shakti, in terms of the impact of, generative AI or super AI for that matter, right? Now, oftentimes, again, if you've been following the latest, updates from the World Economic Forum, I think pretty much most of the panels are discussing about the evolution of AI, the how it could surpass potentially human intelligence. So what do you see as some of the risks? Again, Mr. Shakti, if you can elaborate a little bit more, because you probably do a lot more practical stuff. Do you see that happening? Your take in terms of, do you see maybe in future that could happen?
Sure. Yeah, sure, Ranjit. See, one example of super AI, I mean, I think we can take it from Star Trek, Next Generation. You all might be familiar with the character Data, right? So Data is basically an android. It's a machine, it's a robot, but for all practical purposes, it talks and works and behaves like a human being, right? And basically it surpasses human strength and human intelligence. It can perform calculations that no human being can do, or like not even the faster the computers can do. So like that's the good part, all the risky work, all the work that is mundane, that is time consuming, all that can be handled by super AI, right? Super AI by definition means that it's AI which has surpassed human intelligence. And as I said earlier, human brain has 10 billion neurons. These machines can have billions and billions of neurons, and as the chips become more sophisticated, they can probably have trillions of neurons. Now the risks can be plenty. For example, the super AI intelligence can reach a stage where it becomes very difficult for human beings to control it, right? What if it goes out of control, right? What if it starts doing things, because it's a self-learning technology? What if it comes to a stage that we are no longer able to control? What if it leads to weaponization of the technology itself, that it starts getting used for destructive purposes? What if there's a lot of malevolence, right? I mean, basically we keep hearing of a malware, but whatever this thing is going to generate will be so difficult and so complex to handle that we may have no solution to it. That is what I see, that super AI, that could be the ultimate stage. But it is not just software that again handle these things, right? That will come into play. The hardware has to grow accordingly. I mean, if you take the example of data, like they use a concept of like a positronic brain. I don't know what like that really means, because that doesn't exist in reality. But what it's saying is that we may come to a stage where semiconductors get replaced by superconductors, and superconductors are much, much, much faster and much more performant than like semiconductors. So the hardware and the software, they all have to grow together. But that unless we have strong AI governance, right, whatever we do, right, I mean, like there's a concept or a data governance, like you were talking about clean data, right, that is handled through data lineage, data rationalization, data governance. No such thing exists in the AI domain right now. So we need AI governance to ensure that all the negative effects of super AI can be eliminated, or we have means to handle them.
Understood. Again, I think interesting thoughts, right? In terms of governance, specifically in terms of how do you ensure there is strong governance process built into AI, will sort of help ensure that from a risk standpoint, we are able to mitigate some of these challenges that we see in terms of it potentially surpassing and maybe bad actors using that to do, malicious things. So great thoughts again. So if I can come.
Yes, one thing,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, one thing I wanted to add was that what differentiates between like super AI from us human beings is that we have this concept of conscience, right? Ethics. The super AI thing, it is not trained on ethics. It is not trained on super conscience, right? It will do what it is trained to do, right? And it will learn on that thing, but it may never become a human being in terms of being a conscience thing. That I think is a huge challenge. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, again, a great point. The way you build it, the way you are able to train it, I think it's all, I mean, we are the people who are creating it. So at the end of the day, we have to take that responsibility of ensuring we are preparing it in a way that will be beneficial for humankind at large. Now, again, coming back to the point of, in terms of, Ganvi, if you can throw some light on, since you discussed with a lot of business leaders, so in terms of what you see as next steps in terms of how can business leaders prepare for the advent of Gen AI, and what are some of the steps that they can take in terms of maybe strategic planning and then workforce development?
I think often when we speak about Gen AI or the basic thought that leaders or the workers at the organization have is that, hey, would that replace us, or hey, would we be out? So one thing that leaders should understand and should make their employees understand is that nobody would, especially in today's scenario where everybody wants to directly interact with someone regarding an issue, or especially the customer-centric companies where the customer wants to directly get in touch with a human and not just a robot, right? So all these Gen AI capabilities that basically, or any sort of AI capabilities that we're talking about, the leaders should basically make their workforce understand that it is just a tool. They should rather look at it as a tool that would help them to actually do their work much better and help them improve on their own performance, because often we see that adaptability becomes an issue when leaders are trying to drive these innovations, right? And once they see and try with one or two initiatives for a year, then it kind of takes a backseat. So I think the most important thing for a leader is to ensure that they make the employees understand the reason and the necessity as to why they have to do it and how it would actually help them in return to improve their performance.
Coming back to the regulatory aspect of AI, right? Again, we are seeing a lot of regulations being coming up, being adopted by governments. One is obviously we've seen the evolution of the technology. We've seen how it could benefit. We've seen the risks. We are also going to see the regulatory impact of it, because obviously that's an important part to ensure that it's being ethically used. It's being used for the right benefit of humankind. So we are seeing, like EU recently adopted regulation on AI. US is in the process of adopting it. So Mr. Ramkumar, if you can throw some light on how important it is for organizations to be compliant. One is obviously ensuring the safe and ethical usage of it. Second is ensuring the regulatory compliance, and how difficult or challenging it could be to ensure that they are complying with the regulation.
Yeah, for business, navigating the regulatory landscape for Gen AI or Super AI that we are discussing, it is essential for business, because as a business we need to ensure compliance, minimize whatever legal risk that we have to, and obviously maintain the ethical standards of the business. Now, from regulatory perspective, the existing compliance and regulation that we have in place, whether we talk about from data privacy and security perspective, GDPR and CCPA compliant, will play a role to ensure that the use of Gen AI compliance with data protection regulations, right? And also the way we currently also we do this in our organism, but then the data encryption that we talk about, right? How do we do that? And access control to protective sensitive data used by AI models or generated by AI models, this also becomes important. The another major discussion that's going on when it comes to regulatory requirement is the intellectual property and copyright, right? The data that is produced by AI, who owns the data? So the copyright compliance will become very, very important. So as a business, we need to be vigilant about this intellectual property rights and copyrights, especially if our AI systems generate content, right? And if in that case, we need to ensure that AI generated content respects the copyright laws and permissions. So that becomes the responsibility for us, the business leaders, and also the ownership and licensing. When we talk about copyright, right, we need to clarify the ownership and the licensing agreement for such contents, or if you have to call it inventions, right? So we need to be very careful. And I think earlier also we discussed about fairness and biasness, right? If we provide biased data as an input to AI, the output also will be very biased. So we need to be careful about the anti-discrimination law that apply to AI system, right? We need to ensure that the AI model do not perpetuate bias or discriminate against any particular group or any particular gender. And also ethics is something we again discuss. So we need to ensure we develop and adhere to ethical AI guidelines to promote fairness and transparency and accountability. And also from liability and accountability, because when we talk about regulation compliance, we cannot ignore, liability and accountability. So this is very important. We need to consider the potential for a product liability claims if a system cause any damage or harm, and makes mistakes in erroneous decision, right? If I have to put it that way. So we need to review the existing liability laws and assess how they apply to AI products and services that we may produce. And also it's important for us as an organization to have that accountability frameworks, not only that helps our internal stakeholder also to establish clear lines of accountability within our organization for any AI system that we use, whether it's Gen AI or in future Super AI. We need to define the roles and responsibility for AI development, deployment, and oversight. Consumer protection is, again, it's very, very important, because even in the example that I mentioned, we may end up using customer data and consumer data. So we'll have to be careful when it comes to transparency, with our customer, what data we consume, what output we are producing, by using their data. This is all we need to be careful. And also other debate is on the marketing and advertising, right? When we create content and market it or advertise it, we need to comply with those advertising regulations and guidelines, especially if you are operating in industries, such as marketing or e-commerce. And regulatory guidelines, we'll have to be aware. I'm sure there will be many more new guidelines for Gen AI. So we need to be aware of those things and make sure we adhere to those guidelines. And also, as we start adopting AI more and more, we need to have process for ethical review and audits, regular audits and external reviews. That helps us to make sure we comply with the regulatory requirements or compliance, and that also increase the work of documentation and record keeping for us, as we do for any other regulatory requirements. So overall, from risk perspective, we need to make sure that any use of GenAI or any product or service developed by GenAI, we need to make sure we adhere to regulatory compliance. So this will become a major, topic for discussion, in very soon, as every organization adopts GenAI and put it into use. So this will become a important need for organization. Is what I like to submit.
Sure. Again, I think interesting thoughts were on the regulatory side of things, specifically in the IP disputes claims, who owns, the algorithms. We are already seeing lawsuits on OpenAI being filed by some of the prominent news media. I don't know if you've seen that. So I think it's going to get interesting, obviously, from a regulatory standpoint as well, because on one side we have regulation, the second side is we will have a lot of disputes. People, large technology companies will try to, say it is their IP. They will, there will be maybe disputes around sharing of, specific technology. So again, it'll evolve, as we see that. So interesting time. So now coming to the automation part, right? Again, Mr. Nirupam, if you can throw some light on one side, we are saying AI will help improve our lives. On the other side, there is a risk of a lot of automation happening and people losing jobs. So your take on that, is that going to be a boon or a bane for organizations to tackle?
I think, again, a very tricky question here. So what I think is short term, it's going to be a bit of a bane, not really a boon, because most people are not really ready for short term disruptive events, and AI is going to be really a disruptive events. If I look at some of the websites which tracks the layoffs, and some of the websites are there like layoffs.fyi. So if you see, since beginning of this year, and we are not really much ahead in the year, more than around 5,000 jobs have been laid off in America and Canada markets. So in technology space, and a lot of it is linked to automation, not generally Gen AI, but linked to all kinds of automation. But yes, so what's going to happen is the job profiles are going to change. And again, here the regulatory part you talked about earlier is going to play a big role, because the technology cannot, or generally is not allowed in any mature society to run amok. So you always create safeguards around technology and how it impacts on the society. So there will be training programs. There could be some kind of a UBI. Many countries have already adopted with different names. There will be, and there has to be a lot of focus on how do we adopt and adapt to this technology, which we call a generative AI. So organizations, companies, businesses will definitely need to learn to work with this, because what I have seen and the way it's going, a lot of work which teams were able to do in weeks is now happening in seconds. Okay, with the use of test technology. So this kind of fast-paced environment will really cut short on a lot of costs, because VCs and stock markets will lap it up as a cost saving device, and they will say, yes, why, if somebody else is using it and saving cost, why are you not using it? And that will create a lot of pressure on businesses to adopt and consequently trigger more layoffs. But what also is happening is this technology is going to be adopted into businesses, which again, as we all know, in Indian IT sector, require a lot of people to work through. It doesn't work on its own. So that's where the new jobs will come in, and again, people will need to get skilled. People will need to understand where the real use case is and which is hype. So distinguish that, and all that factor will combine. And I only hope that we all industry as industry leaders participate in these discussions and bring out some novel use cases with the government, so that the impact on society is minimized.
Sure.
While continuously keep innovating.
Absolutely. And I think, again, great thoughts where you shared, how it's important for organizations to upskill people in the right way. On one side is obviously technology is going to evolve continuously. We are going to see more and more technology adoption. Automation has always been there. We were talking about RPA a decade back, maybe now we're talking about AI. And we were talking at that time about RPA taking away jobs, but I think it has only helped automate a lot of manual tasks. And possibly we're going to see the same thing happening with AI as well, right? So Amit, I see you've unmuted yourself. You wanted to share anything on the
Yeah,
topic?
so I think to add on into this, so I was listening World Economic Forum, the AI context, and also sometimes ago I attended Gartner Symposium in Kochi a few months ago, and there was a reference like, by uh, 2026, the reference was something we, despite of all advancement in AI, the global job and the impact will be neutral. So there's no job impact. There's nothing like that. It is a very bold statement. And also by 2026, we'll have over 100 billion kind of a robo colleague in a kind of a work environment we are into. And by 2033, in fact, the AI solutions which introduce all augment related kind of a thing, which we were talking initially, a lot of super AI related thing, which will augment the machine's data, the hardware capability enhancement, and multiple different things. So going through all these things, we are going to add almost 500 million of human job. So that's kind of a number given by the Gartner, and that's kind of things was being discussed in the World Economic Forum as well in the recent past. So that's the things.
Thanks for sharing, Amit. I think again, interesting insight. Where you mentioned, the other side of the advancement of technology will in fact create more jobs, and if people are upskilling themselves in the right technologies and able to make sense of how they can use it for the betterment, there will be a lot more opportunities for individuals. So great thoughts and thanks for sharing. So again, any other final comments from anyone that they want to share for the benefit of the audience? I just keep it open for everyone. Any insights or any final thoughts or comments?
What I would like to do is share the real life generative AI products that we have implemented at Yatra. I'll give you an example. There are 3 things we have done. One is that you can make a booking, right? Actually, Yatra works a lot with the corporate clients, right? It's not as big in B2C as in the corporate clients. What happens is that when you have large consulting companies like EY, for example, or BCG, they make like multiple bookings in a day because the senior partners would not know when the meetings would end. So we have developed a solution using voice and using Gen AI. We have used OpenAI, as well as we have used Palm 2 from Google to do the cancellations by just saying, show me the flights for today. It will display the flights along with PNR number, and we say, cancel PNR ABC123, and it's going to cancel it. It's as simple as that. We have done the same thing by implementing the booking process. Earlier, NLP was always there, right? NLP has been there since 2015. Alexa skills and all that are developed on NLP. So now, but what LLMs do, as I mentioned earlier, is that they understand you as if they are human beings. So now we can tell them, I want to go from Bombay to Delhi and show me the searches. I mean, show me some of the options. It will display the option. Then you say, okay, I want to book flight C6C123, and it's actually going to book the flight for you. Right? That solution so far hasn't existed in the market. Then actually, what also happens is that a lot of our customers, since it's a travel solution, they want to expense all the travel also. One of the expense would be meals, right? Meal during lunch and dinner. And a lot of companies would not reimburse for alcohol, right? So how do I know that there's alcohol in the meal? What we do is we use OCR, and then we scan the receipt, and it will show all the line items. And then we send those line items to an LLM model and ask it, is there any alcohol in it? We can, the traditional route would be that you have a list of all the alcohol brands that are in the market and compare against it. But sometimes, but let's say your receipt says that there was an item called Superior. Now, what is Superior? Superior could be a room type, it could be an alcohol brand. But based on the context of the data that you send, right, OpenAI and LLMs are intelligent enough to know that, look, this is a meal receipt. Superior means that it's a liquor item. So there was alcohol in the meal. Right? And then we have also developed, and I think Mr. Amit Pradhan had mentioned this earlier, we have developed, like using the RAG, like RAG, which is, what is it? Retrieval augmented generator. So what we've done is we have loaded our documents, right? We have a lot of contracts, we have a lot of legal contracts with the suppliers, contract with the vendors, and they have been loaded. And now instead of reading the contract, we can just ask a query: what are the financial terms? What are the commercial terms with my vendor ABC? And it will give the answer right then and there. This had never existed before. So these are some of the practical implementation that we have actually done. And I would really love to hear, from my fellow colleagues if they have done some similar implementations.
Anyone want to share final thoughts as we wrap up in the last few minutes?
We have also developed a similar kind of end-to-end application with the help of AI only. So I just I thought to share with you all. So this was a very simple requirement also. The requirement, the person, there were three, four person who used to make a monthly report and used to share with like 100 people across the India. And to make that kind of report, to generate report and then sending across. So all these kind of things, then we thought, why not develop some sort of automation so that we don't have to do that. Which usually, and I'm talking about the real example, and there were three persons who used to work for 10 days to, complete this job. Now this job is end to end, can be done in half an hour time. Within that half an hour also, they don't have to sit on the PC, and the things are going on and just sending the reports. And this entire thing was developed with the help of ChatGPT only. And we were having this kind of project, trial project, right? So yeah, so I think there are immense potential.
Sure. Again, thank you for sharing. I think we're almost out of time. So thank you all for joining this panel. I think it was a lovely discussion. Just to quickly summarize the discussion, we discussed about the evolution of AI, the evolution of Gen AI. We've seen aspects where Gen AI is being practically used across different sectors, industries. We discussed about how business leaders are continuously adopting the technology and practical use cases. We also talked about the importance of data, an aspect where garbage in, garbage out was a good term used in terms of how best you can give a good quality data as an input to an AI system, and then how it can churn out better quality data. We talked about some of the regulations. I think we talked about some of the data privacy elements. We talked about the importance of using encryption, which I thought was a good thought in terms of protecting data, especially when you're using a system as complex as AI. We also discussed about the importance of AI governance, which I thought was again a very good element that leaders need to bring in terms of ensuring the ethical usage of AI. We talked about the upskilling of people, which I think again is very important, including all of us who need to constantly learn about the technology. And again, the misconception that AI is going to replace jobs. In fact, we discussed an interesting thought in terms of the increase of jobs, which we are going to see over the next maybe